What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining me on D's analysis. We're going to be looking at the Bitcoin top calling indicators. This is relevant to MSTR and Bitcoin. You pretty much use Bitcoin as a guide to make your MSTR calls. That's just how it goes. Whatever MSTR's price action does outside of that, it's out of our control. So the first one that we're going to be looking at and running through will be the pi cycle top. So the first one we're going over is the pi cycle top. As you can see, the first time the red was running underneath the green. As the red crossed the green, we got our top. That's where the red circle is. That's the top of the channel. Once again, you see it here. This time it barely crossed. I would say more of just a tap. So as you can see, there's somewhat of a regression. This was a full cross. This one was just a simple tap and then separated again. That gave us our top here in the red at the top of the channel. And I would expect something similar where the red starts to catch up to the green, but there's going to be somewhat of a regression, which means this time I think there might be a gap and it actually ends up not touching. I know some people think it's going to touch again, but my guess, just by looking at the first two data points, is that there'll be a little bit of a gap, but that doesn't mean it has to play out correctly. So that can be completely wrong, and it can tap it or completely cross, just like the first two. But if we continue the pattern, it should be a little bit wider on this peak here. So we'll see. And that aligns with the regressions that we see in Bitcoin. The second one we're going to use is the Tether Dominance. As you can see, you have this blue line curling up every time we get a touch. That's usually our top here on Bitcoin. Somewhat of a local top. So you can see top here, red dot on the line. You have a top in Bitcoin, as you can see here on the pink. Same thing here, red dot, top. Then it called your second peak here in 2021. Called your local high here in March. And then it called your local high here November, January, that time frame. So kind of expect the same thing here. Also doesn't mean that the move will be over completely, but there is a strong chance touching this, being in, Q4 or something like that of 2025 or Q3 of 2025, that could be the top. So this is the other indicator we're looking for. We're looking for that move down to this blue line, and that could potentially mark somewhat of a local top or the top for the entire cycle. The next one's the MVRV Z-Score. As you can see, anytime we get above 6, that's usually our peak for Bitcoin. Somewhat of a local top or the top for the cycle. So as you can see here, it is kind of regressing downward. So I don't know if we reach this 7 mark, but I would just say 6 to be conservative, maybe 5.5. We're currently sitting at around 2.5, maybe 3. Oh, we're sitting at 276 exactly. So if we hit 5.5, that would probably put the market cap, closer to 5 trillion, maybe high 4s, mid 4s. So just think about that. That's going to be our other indicator that we're going to use. Once you start approaching the 90 mark here on the monthly RSI, you're getting extremely overheated and you're potentially going to find that top. As you can see, it lines up with this top here and it lines up with this top here. So those will be the indicators that we'll use. And you can actually see the bottoms line up. Once you hit this 50 mark and below, you get close to that bottom. You can see it happening twice. So it kind of calls your top and your bottom. As you can see, top and bottom. So, and if you want it to be more exact, you could put a line here and you're sitting around 42 or so, and that's around that area will be your bottom, whether it's 45, 48, maybe a little bit lower than 42, just gives you a rough estimate. The other thing we will use is the Bitcoin dominance falling underneath 45. When you overlay Bitcoin, Bitcoin's in the pink. You can see once we get to that 45 region, we found our top. We made it to that 45 region again, or close to it. We're on the way to it, and you can see that we found that top. So I kind of expect something like that to happen again. But of course, we need for this to fall down and Bitcoin to rise. If Bitcoin is rising and this is falling, that means altcoins are outperforming, which is good. That means alt season is going to be kicking in. That means it's going to bring in all the retail investors that aren't in right now or even looking at crypto. So that'll bring all the FOMO in, and that's when you're going to start hearing random people, talking about it. The fear and greed index is the next indicator that we're going to use. Once we hit that 90 mark, that's when we know that we're getting extremely overheated and we could be finding a local top or the top for the cycle. So those will be the other ones that we're going to be using as well. So keep an eye on fear and greed index. Of course, I'll let you guys know. I'll be monitoring these things and I'll let you know whenever I see alarming numbers. Another indicator we're going to use is Coinbase Ranking on the App Store. Not in the finance category, but the total App Store. It's currently sitting at 274. But when you see this thing going up to, top 10, you're getting overheated because that means everybody's looking at finance. This is the top app being used and downloaded out of all the apps that are out there. A Coinbase app is being, top of the charts. That lets you know that a lot of retail FOMO's coming in and we're getting overheated. So as you can see here, in November, you can see we ran up pretty significantly. So we pushed all the way up to number 9 in November. And in the past, you can see 2021, it ran up to 7. You can see it ran up to number 1 here in 2021 as well, or number 2. So it happens time and time again. So in 2017, same thing. Since it's a lot of data, it's going to be hard to get it there, but you can see it's top 10 all the way up to like maybe number 1. It's just hard to get the exact point, but you get the idea. Once we break top 10, start being worried, The final indicator that I think is pretty underrated is using your, just your common sense and listening to what everybody's talking about. If your coworkers that never talk about crypto or finance or anything along those lines start talking about buying crypto, start buying meme coins, you know that there's a problem and we're probably getting overheated, and you're going to start seeing the other indicators flashing red signs, and then you see that should be like a signal that, hey, maybe we're reaching a top because this guy never talks about finances, and all of a sudden now this is his main topic that he wants to talk about. So keep that in mind. That's another underrated indicator that you have to keep an eye on, and just, listen to people and what they're talking about and what they usually talk about. If it's somebody that's always talking about finance anyways, then this is irrelevant to them. So keep that in mind. Use all these indicators. Of course, I'll be going over it anyways in the videos, keeping you guys up to date. But yeah, those are the top ones that I'm going to be looking at. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know if I'm missing an indicator or something that can call the top, or it has historically in 17, 21, even in the November 2024 local top. Let me know what you guys think. Drop a comment, like, subscribe, share with a friend, and I'll see you guys in the next one.